Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. Could new advances in forensic mean detectives are closer to solving the murder of Billy Joe Jenkins in Hastings 25 years ago?
How a deal between the government and farmers over nitrogen and CO2 supplies could help keep down food prices.
The problem is with nitrogen, which is the key crop nutrient, is that if you reduce the amount you put on, then you reduce the amount of crop that you get off.
Also this Tuesday evening, the Year of the Tiger, how one community in Kent marking Chinese New Year.
And ready to rock, the hit musical is back on tour across the region. We speak to its creator, Ben Elton. Good evening. It was a murder that horrified a community and has never been solved. But now cold case detectives hope new DNA and blood tests could finally solve the murder of Billy Joe Jenkins 25 years ago this month.
The teenager was beaten to death with a tent peg at her home in Hastings. Her foster father, Sean Jenkins, was convicted of her murder, but acquitted after a second retrial.
Well, Sussex Police will now re-examine evidence from the crime scene to see if advances in forensic science can deliver a breakthrough. In a moment, we'll talk to John Ryle from Sussex Police Headquarters. But first, here's his report.
13-year-old Billy Joe Jenkins was beaten to death with an iron tent peg as she painted patio doors at her home next to Alexandra Park in Hastings. Her foster father, Sean, a deputy head teacher at the time, was convicted of her murder, but formally acquitted in 2006 after a second retrial.
I am very angry, but the key is to try and harness that anger at the person who destroyed my life and who took Billy's life.
The key disputed evidence involved microscopic drops of Billy Joe's blood found on Mr. Jenkins' clothing.
The prosecution claimed that the blood had got onto Sean's clothing because he had actually killed Billy Joe with a tent peg, whacking out, hence blood on his clothing. But the defence said that, in fact, the blood, which was microscopic, had come when Sean Jenkins had returned to the house with his other children, seen Billy Joe's body on the patio, rushed, picked her up in his arms, and then blood from her mouth came onto his clothing that way.
Fresh tests using the latest forensic science will now be conducted on blood and other evidence gathered at the crime scene. And today, Sussex Police renewed their appeal for information in what has become one of the UK's most high-profile unsolved murders.
Well, to Sussex Police Headquarters now, and John Ryle. John, was there a trigger for this review?
Well, Stacey, cold case murders are assessed for re-investigation every 2 years, and this case is now coming up just a few days away from its 25th anniversary, so that may well be giving this review a lot of added importance and clout. Now, Sussex Police have had a number of notable successes with cold cases in recent years, and they dearly like to see the Billy Joe Jenkins case added to that list. Since the year of her murder, 1997, giant strides have been made, of course, in forensic science, and a former Scotland Yard detective, Peter Blexley, believes the power of DNA analysis now could well provide the breakthrough, the long-awaited breakthrough in this case.
Forensic science moves on every day. There are new developments being discovered, and that's a great thing for law enforcement. The capabilities of forensic scientists now bear little resemblance to what they did in 1997. So much more can be achieved by examining the smallest of particles and things that are invisible to the naked eye. This forensic review, I'm sure the police are hoping, may give them some secrets and may give them the key to finally unlock this tragic case.
And John, a renewed appeal for information from police tonight.
Yes, that's right. This is chiefly a forensic search for new evidence, for new leads, for new lines of inquiry. But police are combining it with a renewed appeal to the public. They want to hear from anyone who thinks they may have fresh information. If that's you should contact Sussex Police on 101 and quote Operation Cathedral.
John Ryle, thank you very much for that.
In other news, there are not enough staff able to carry out mandatory drug tests at Rochester Prison. That's according to a new report by inspectors. As well as more wardens, it's recommended extra support should be put in place for new arrivals, better safety strategies, and that prisoners need more time outside their cells.
6 times as many migrants crossed to Kent and Sussex in small boats in January 2022 compared with the same month last year. British authorities rescued 1,347 migrants. That compares to just 223 the previous year. The Dover MB has again called on the French to do more to intercept the crossings, amid warnings numbers could rise further as we move into spring.
A lighthouse that stood proud on the Sussex coast for more than 50 years will be decommissioned this spring. The Royal Sovereign Lighthouse off Eastbourne was first brought into operation in 1971, but we removed because it's no longer structurally sound. In its absence, the nearby Beachy Head Lighthouse will be upgraded to ensure the safety of passing ships.
Plans to cut £5 million from services for homeless in Kent are being opposed by Swell Council. The council says it has to make challenging decisions because of rising costs and demands. But Swell Council says these services are a lifeline for vulnerable people.
This is a cost shunt to district councils, and it's a very important service across Kent. It prevents the postcode lottery effect that KCC admitted when they first launched this service there was in Kent for homeless services. And our staff will of course continue to work as hard as they can to support rough sleepers and former rough sleepers to get to a point where they can hold down a full tenancy.
Now, the government's welcomed a new deal between the carbon dioxide industry and the company that supplies 2/3 of all CO2 in the UK to continue production.
The gas is widely used in the food and drink industry, in fizzy drinks and in food, as it extends the shelf life and keeps things fresh while in transit.
But it's actually a byproduct of fertilizer, and high energy prices had halted production, which has now sent prices soaring. Tony Green has been investigating the impact on food prices.
Here on the Iford estate near Lewes, wheat, barley and other crops are grown over 2,500 acres. In an industry where profit margins are small, the bills are getting big. Fertilizer prices have tripled, creating big bills and a big problem.
We were lucky enough to be able to buy ours before the price went up, and we're paying around about £270 a tonne. Last year we paid about £200. If you went out to buy it today, if you were lucky enough to be able to buy some, you'd be paying £650, maybe even £700 a tonne. The problem is with nitrogen, which is the key crop nutrient, if you reduce the amount you put on, then you reduce the amount of crop that you get off. We normally grow milling wheat for bread making, and so the conversation we'll be having through the spring is, does the crop warrant the extra nitrogen required to get it to the bread making standard, or do we just grow it for animal feed?
What's grown all over the country relies on what's made here. 2 fertiliser plants supply 2/3 of the country. Rising gas prices had stopped production here before a deal was struck. Now nitrogen fertiliser is expensive and harder to source.
The problem I think farmers have got at the moment is a decision on whether or not to put off buying fertiliser in the hope that the fertiliser price will come down. The problem there, I think, is if you look at the futures price for gas, it's likely to remain at comparable prices to today's price for the considerable future.
Woodchurch Farm in Birchington does use liquid nitrogen, but already started looking at alternatives 3 years ago.
Here we're using paper waste, which comes from a paper factory in Kent. That's organic, of course. We use all the horse dung we can get, a lot of horses around here. And we're also using digestate from an anaerobic digestion plant, which uses nothing but waste. It creates electricity from that plant, and the digestate, which is the byproduct, we use on the farm, and that saves 1/3 of our artificial nitrogen usage. Several farmers are doing this, many farmers are doing, but all farmers will have to do it. We've all got to go on this journey to try and reduce our artificial fertiliser to the absolute minimum.
With energy prices staying high, many farms are facing a smaller yield or smaller profits. Tony Green, ITV News, Birchington.
More than 50 child protection referrals for domestic abuse are being made every day here in the South East. That's according to findings from the NSPCC. It's a rise of 38% from the previous year.
Transport managers have warned there'll be no Gatwick Express service until further notice. Commuters are being advised to use southern trains between Brighton and London as an alternative.
You're watching ITV News in the Meridian region. Coming up, Holly with the weather.
Well, February has kicked off with some mild conditions and also some sunshine. What else does it have in store? I'll have your full forecast.
And we catch up with Ben Elton, the brains behind the hit musical We Will Rock You, ahead of its tour across the South East.
And you can find more on all of our top stories. Just go to our website, itv.com/Meridian. You can call us, the number 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.
Train companies should be doing more to make it easier for families with young children to travel. That's according to campaigners who say the rail network as a whole needs to work harder to attract parents.
Across the train network, children under 5 can travel for free, but ITV News has checked with all the train companies which operate here in our region, and Great Western, running services west of Gatwick and Brighton, does guarantee a seat for children travelling for free.
But these companies, which mainly operate commuter services in the South East, don't have any reservations for any passengers, let alone children under 5. And for some parents, that is a real challenge, as James Webster has been finding out.
For Eddie and Toby, travelling by train always feels like an exciting adventure. But it's not always an adventure their mum Rebecca looks forward to. One recent journey has been a particular challenge.
We had one seat, in a row of 2. There's a man sat beside me and I had both children on my knee.
How unmanageable would that have been, having to be just on one single seat with them?
You've got a wriggly, 18-month-old and a wriggly 2.5-year-old. At one point, one was sat on my knee and the other one was just sort of sat on my feet, and they were hungry.
And it's not just the lack of seats that Rebecca found difficult.
Changing facilities are quite hard to find, and storage of prams. But I get it, trains are made for commuters and not necessarily families travelling.
Under 5s like Eddie and Toby can always travel for free, but they're not guaranteed a seat, even when adults and children can reserve themselves one with a regular ticket. The government announced last year that a new organisation, Great British Railways, will take over responsibility for the rail network. A consultation is due to end later this week, asking for feedback on what changes should be considered. Transport Focus, which campaigns for passengers' rights, thinks working harder to attract families needs to be a priority.
We know that in other countries you have the option to then apply for a free of charge seat reservation, so that could work, or maybe some other way to book for a nominal fee. In the longer term, some reform would be great to sort out this seat system, but for now just information to break down those barriers.
The website Mumsnet says train travel for parents can be stressful and would like to see family-friendly carriages introduced. It's an idea supported by the parenting expert Angela Morris.
You don't run it 24 hours, but you can have it running during core hours, like you can have it from 10 till 3. But just the concept and the idea, I think it's certainly worth exploring and trialling, and then they can get feedback. Does this work? And people will see that as value for money. They won't. I think people will complain less about increasing fare rises when they think that there's more happening for their money.
So, could any of that happen? The Rail Delivery Group says now is the time for such a debate. It's always interested in new ideas, especially as people's travel needs change as we emerge from the pandemic.
Oh yes, turn the page.
For Rebecca, she hopes that in time, travelling by train will become easier for her and other young families. James Webster, ITV News.
Well, we're approaching 16 minutes past 6 and the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. Here's Mary Nightingale.
I'll be bringing you the very latest on the fallout from the Sue Gray report into the gatherings at Downing Street as the Prime Minister touches down in Ukraine to talk diplomacy. Another of his backbench MPs pulls his support and says Boris Johnson should resign. Here, 1 in 10 children are at risk of getting measles because they haven't had the MMR jab. And Whoopi Goldberg apologises for saying the Holocaust was not about race. So do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thanks, Mary. But now a football and the continuing plight of Gillingham, where fans are hoping for better times after the appointment of new manager Neil Harris.
The 44-year-old has signed a 2.5-year deal, ending weeks of speculation following the departure of Steve Evans. And as Sarah Gom reports, he hasn't had long to bed in.
A privilege and an honour is how Neil Harris describes his appointment at the club where he spent a season during his playing days. His sentiments sincere despite the mammoth task ahead.
Extremely proud to be here. I know I'm coming at a very difficult stage for the football club. But, we can only go one way now, and that's a positive way.
The former Millwall and Cardiff boss joins Gillingham with the team off the foot of the League One table thanks only to goal difference and having suffered an humiliating 7-2 defeat to Oxford. Harris's arrival brings a close to Steve Lovell's spell as interim manager. He had been brought in last month following the departure of Steve Evans.
I know there's some need to pick the players up on the back of Saturday's result, but hopefully me being in the building is a real positive for them as well.
Supporters and Chairman Paul Scally hope the arrival of Harris heralds a new era and the beginning of a fight for survival.
The atmosphere in the stadium and in the club with the staff and the players, as soon as he arrived early in the morning yesterday was just incredible. It was like day and night, and probably for the first time in 3 months, I went home happy.
We need results quickly, but it's about the long term as well, and that's really what sold it to me, was Paul's longer vision of thinking about the summer and then moving forward, hopefully in League One next year, but looking at a longer plan over the next couple of years of trying to build a squad that resembles Gillingham Football Club.
And Gillingham's new man has a baptism of fire in front of his home crowd. The Gills host Crewe tonight at Priestfield. Sarah Gom, ITV News.
Good luck to the Gills tonight. So today is the first day of the Chinese New Year, and it's the start of the year of the tiger, an animal that symbolises strength and courage.
There will be some public celebrations again, but for many, New Year is the time to spend with your loved ones.
Abigail Bracken has been to meet one family in Kent as they welcomed in the Year of the Tiger.
Keeping alive Chinese traditions at home in the high-wheel town of Cranbrook. Nathaniel and Zachary write couplets in Chinese script, symbolising spring and luck, to decorate their door. But not before tearing off last year's ox decorations and replacing them with a tiger. All traditions, like making these New Year dumplings, important to their mother, who was born in Taiwan.
I want them to know part of my culture. Yeah, even we embracing the English culture, but it's also more fun to know different part of the world. My boys, they are just half Taiwanese Chinese. I still want to pass this tradition and culture to them. Because of this Chinese New Year, we can have more special activities like decoration a house and doing the food together, and sometimes we will go to Chinatown to see lion dance or dragon dance.
Dances that were cancelled nationwide last year because of the COVID lockdown. Not seen warding off evil spirits here in Gravesend since 2020. They're returning again this Thursday, but without the traditional Chinese dancing and children's performances held in the local theatre. On New Year's Day, it's traditional for children to be given red envelopes containing money. This one's got a tiger on it, but the children have to say some lucky words first.
Gonti Fatai, Daddy Dally.
There you go.
Money! Money! Money!
And their traditional New Year food choices are thought to bring prosperity. Why do you make dumplings for Chinese New Year?
Because they're shaped like old
Yeah,
Chinese
they're shaped
money.
like ancient
And
money.
everybody likes money because it's lucky.
Luck they're hoping to encourage as this family celebrate the start of the Chinese New Year at home together. Abigail Bracken, ITV News, Cranbrook.
They were very pleased with that money, weren't they?
Abigail was very popular, wasn't she?
She'll be back next year. Now, it's 20 years since Queen and Ben Elton's hit musical We Will Rock You took to the stage for the very first time.
Featuring 24 of Queen's greatest hits, it's been watched by over 16 million people in 20 countries.
And the show is back with a new tour across the region, playing at Southend and Canterbury.
And it's kicking off at the King's Theatre in Portsmouth, where I'm delighted to say Ben Elton and Eleanor Skye, who plays Scaramouche, join us. Ben, first off, did you ever think when the show premiered 2 decades ago, it would still be going strong all these years later?
Well, goodness gracious, I don't think you can ever plan for a hit like We Will Rock You's been. And to be here at Southsea, mounting yet another We Will Rock You, bringing love back after 2 years without live entertainment. This is a show about live entertainment, and that's what we'll be delivering. So, no, I didn't look to the future then, although the show's set in the future. So I'm very, very happy that we are still rocking well into the 21st century.
Ben, how did you come up with the idea in the first place, and how did you get Queen to agree to using their amazing back catalogue?
I didn't need to get them to agree. They asked me. Nobody. I mean, the Queen wanted to do their work is uniquely theatrical. I mean, no songbook could be more suited to the theatre than the splendid operatic scale of Queen's music. And so they were talking about a musical round about, well, 20 years ago, but they wanted a comedy because Freddie, they all have such a great sense of humour and they could laugh at themselves. And to my great good fortune, they came to me. They liked Blackadder, they liked the young ones, they liked what I do. I knew them slightly, and they said, do you want to think about it? And I said, well, you're a legendary band. What you need is a legend. Something like King Arthur meets the Matrix. And Roger said, sounds good to me. And to my great good fortune, they liked the idea I came up with.
Superb. And Eleanor, Queen have so many fantastic songs, of course. Do you have a favourite part of the show or a favourite song to perform?
My favourite one that I don't perform is I Want It All, but my favourite one to perform is probably Hammer to Fall. I do love Under Pressure though.
They're all such bangers, and we do about 22 of them. The audience are on their feet.
Can't really choose.
Yeah, it is hard to choose what's your favourite Queen song because there's just so many. And we play them all. With a live band, there'll be a full live band on set.
Yeah.
So the audience can get to choose their favourite.
Yeah.
And Ben, finally, you've been all over the world with We Will Rock You. Is there something different, though, about a home crowd?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, Queen are a global phenomenon, and music and art should be universal. But of course, they are a British band. A great British band. So much of our lives have been, the soundtrack has been Queen. So yeah, to be here in Southsea, playing all over the country before perhaps returning to London. It is a special thing. And of course the jokes are a little bit easier. I spend a lot of time trying to work the comedy out in German or whatever, and it's not easy because they put the operative bit at the end of the sentence so the punchline comes before the feed. It's very hard. So yeah, doing it in English to a home crowd with all the local references to our pop and rock industry, it's a particular pleasure. And Brian and Roger and I are just so glad to be back in the UK, bringing the love back.
And the fans obviously love it. Ben and Eleanor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Oh, he's brilliant, isn't he? And it's going to be a fantastic show. Holly is here now. Holly, what do you have for us tonight?
I have got a weather word for you. So if Director Gwyn could pop it up behind me, we can take a look at it. It is mega flash.
Sounds impressive.
Well, I have to say, this is a word that even I hadn't come across until today, but it is an exceptionally long flash of lightning, or long-lasting flash of lightning. So today, the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, has announced 2 new mega flash records, okay, if you're following. So let's take a look at what they have been, because they are just phenomenal. So, in the United States, from Texas to Mississippi, there was a lightning flash that was 768 kilometres long. That's 477 miles, which is roughly the distance from Southampton to Inverness in Scotland. Oh, well, I can't say I'm an expert on this, but it's done using satellites, basically.
Wow.
So incredibly long, one lightning flash that is. Not just that, but also the longest in duration has been recorded. So just over 17 seconds. This is in Uruguay, beating the previous record that was a little bit shorter than that back in 2019. And again, this is just one flash of lightning. We're talking the physical flash, not the thunder, but the physical single flash of lightning lasting for 17 seconds, which just absolutely puts into shade, doesn't it, the sort of the thunderstorms and the lightning strikes that we have here in the UK.
So we're not going to get any here in the southeast over the next few days?
No, and actually January and February are so quiet for thunderstorms because our temperatures are so low. We just haven't got the energy and the heat to generate thunderstorms. So no, nothing like that in the forecast at the moment.
Oh, we're glad to hear that, aren't we?
We certainly are.
Holly, thank you very much indeed. Right, let's get the details. Here's Holly Green.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
A mild feel to things for today, especially compared to yesterday. We have had quite a breeze around, mind you. Into the next couple of days, tonight as well, a mild feel to things. I think bright skies again for tomorrow, and actually less windy as well. So the bigger picture shows high pressure down to the southwest. We're in this wedge of mild air at the moment. But this feature skirts through early on Friday. That could bring some quite heavy rain and squally winds for a while, and then you'll notice this chillier air tucks in temporarily for the end of the working week. Out there at the moment then, largely clear skies. A bit of cloud will come and go, I think, through the course of the night. This wind is tending to drop a bit lighter. You might see a touch of patchy rain, but the air that's with us is mild, so temperatures, well, look at this, 9 degrees, 8-9 degrees by the end of the night, which is more like the sorts of values we'd normally see by day at this time of year. So into tomorrow, I think it will be a mild day. I think it'll be quite a bright day. I think we'll see some sunshine overhead. You will see cloud coming and going at times through the day. Temperature-wise, perhaps a smidge lower than today, but equally the winds are a little bit lighter, so actually not feeling too bad, I think, for the time of year really at all. Our high tide times, you've got Margate at midnight 21 and again at 12:54 as you head into the afternoon. And finally, the all-important outlook. Well, perhaps more cloud around for Thursday, though I have to say the cloud detail in this sort of setup is proving quite tricky. Early on Friday, we could well see that weather front bringing some heavy rain and some strong winds, brightening through the day on Friday, but perhaps just feeling that bit chillier with a cold wind. Take care.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Now, just before we go, there's a new series of ITV's Current Affairs programme On Assignment starting tonight. With more details, here's Raggy Omar.
Tonight, on Assignment, I travel to Austria, where tough measures, including mandatory vaccinations, have been introduced for unvaccinated citizens. I explore whether they're creating a so-called COVID underclass. In August 2020, a massive explosion in the port of Beirut killed hundreds and injured thousands, causing millions of pounds of damage. And to this day, no one has been found responsible for the blast. And Lebanon has slumped from crisis to crisis. Rohit Kachru travels to Beirut to ask why this terrible accident was such a turning point for this troubled Middle Eastern country. And finally, with the promise of a house for the price of an espresso, Rachel Younger is in Sicily to find out more about a scheme selling homes for just €1 in an attempt to tackle population drain across rural Italy. That's On Assignment tonight at 10:45.
But before that, the ITV Evening News continues with Mary Nightingale.
Stacey has our late news, but for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks for watching.
Good night.
Good night.